This is your global radiation update for May 11th, 2013. I'm your host, Christina Consolo. This will be my third appearance on United We Strike, and the topic of today's show is chaos versus order. And for the next 30 minutes, we will be discussing the recent problems at U.S. nuke plants, uranium fabrication and processing facilities, nuclear storage points for the military, and the list of reactors worldwide. We will also be discussing the differences in the handling of the Fukushima disaster in comparison to one of the other greatest environmental problems of our time, the BP disaster in the Gulf of Mexico. Chaos is the score upon which reality is written. Henry Miller. From the period of May 1st to May 10th, the NRC event notification page reported the following nuclear power plant problems in the United States. The Palisades nuclear power plant on the west coast of Michigan had a leak of radioactive water and is currently shut down. 79 gallons of contaminated radioactive water was reported to have reached a nearby beach less than a mile away. According to the plant, however, the radiation would have diluted and not posed a health threat. The plant has been in operation since 1971. Calvert Cliffs nuclear power plant had an automatic reactor trip and hot shutdown. The plant is located on the western shore of the Chesapeake Bay in Maryland and has been in operation since 1975. Also in the last week at the Honeywell uranium production plant in Illinois, a highly contaminated worker needed emergency medical treatment. At the Paducah uranium enrichment facility in Kentucky, a radiation alert restricted access to certain areas of the plant for a period of 24 hours. There are a number of lost radioactive sources, stuck shutters, leaking valves, malfunctioning sirens, and other problems, including workers that failed their drug tests on the NRC event notification page. And there was a strange incident at Perry Nuclear Power Plant in Ohio. This article appeared in Cleveland.com. First Energy finds Goldfish in Perry Nuclear Plant, NRC investigating. A pair of radioactive goldfish were found swimming in a lemonade pitcher in Perry Nuclear Power Plant. Their presence in a steam tunnel after a 43-day plant maintenance shutdown has led reactor owner First Energy Corporation on a hunt to find the owner. The fishy tale has prompted federal regulators to ask a lot of new questions about morale at Perry and whether plant operators can control access to radioactive areas as required by regulation. Clearly, somebody brought the two goldfish into the plant. They did not swim into the plant, said Perry spokeswoman Jennifer Young. Though fish do occasionally turn up in power plants pulled in with cooling water from rivers or lakes, Young said investigators are pretty sure these two came in through the front door, probably in a plastic bag in someone's pocket. Security checks of employees involved detection of metal and bombs, not fish in plastic bags. Employees and contractors are not patted down and not subject to body scans, said Young. Crews taking down scaffolding in an underground steam tunnel at the plant found the fish earlier in the week and immediately filed a report, as required by federal regulations. Young said investigators were questioning employees and contractors and reviewing video recordings of the tunnel. The tunnel contains lines that carry superheated steam from the reactor building to the adjacent turbine building, which houses the plant's steam turbine and electrical generator. The tunnel is off-limits as a radiation area when the reactor is running. Waste in the bottom of the pitcher convinced investigators the fish had not been in the container for very long, and chemists in Perry's laboratory quickly determined that the water in the pitcher was reactor water and that the fish and the water were only slightly radioactive. Still, early Thursday morning, both of the inch-and-a-half-long fish died. They did not have enough exposure of radioactivity to hurt them, Young said. It was probably due to lack of care before they got to the plant. The radiation could not have killed them. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission on Thursday had more questions than answers. This is not something that happens every day. We want to know why it happened and how it happened, and we are looking at the potential implications. Because of a life-threatening incident during refueling 2 years ago at Perry, in which 3 contractors were briefly exposed to high radiation, the NRC has put the plant under a microscope on the issue of worker safety. The agency was already preparing to send squads of inspectors to the plant in June in an effort to determine whether Perry has corrected past shortcomings. Extra inspectors were at the plant earlier during this shutdown. The company and the NRC said this latest incident is no laughing matter, as in the cartoon TV series The Simpsons, in which blinky and orange fish supposedly had 3 eyes from radiation exposure. Whoever was involved in the Perry incident will not get off as easily as nuclear worker Homer Simpson usually does. And a follow-up to this story appeared in Practical Fish Keeping May 7th. Unfortunately, the 2 fish died. Tests later revealed them to be slightly radioactive, although it's unclear whether their deaths occurred to exposure. Their bodies were disposed of as radioactive waste, a spokesperson from the NRC said. I cannot speculate where the contaminated water could have come from. There are locations in the plant that have slightly radioactive water. We are not aware of any type of leak from the primary coolant system. Another unusual story appeared from a shakeup inside the 91st Missile Wing at Minot Air Force Base, where 17 airmen have been suspended following routine inspections. In March, the 91st Missile Wing underwent a series of inspections evaluated in 22 different categories. We are very critical of ourselves, and we are always conducting a critical assessment of how we are doing, said Colonel Robert Vircher, 91st Missile Wing commander. While airmen in the wing earned high marks in all areas, they fell short in the Intercontinental Ballistic Missile Operations category, earning only a marginal rating. Officials say the suspension of 17 airmen is unprecedented, but at no time was there a danger to anyone, and the missiles themselves were never at risk. Just last week, North Dakota Senator John Hoeven was in Minot calling for continued support of the nuclear triad, including the missile silos being manned by the 91st Missile Wing at Minot. And you can read more about that story on kfytv.com. The battlefield is a scene of constant chaos. The winner will be the one who controls that chaos, both his own and his enemies. Napoleon Bonaparte. As of January 18, 2013, there are 437 nuclear power plant units in 31 countries. The list is as follows. Argentina has 2, Armenia has 1, Belgium has 7, Brazil has 2, Bulgaria has 2, and Canada has 19. China has 17 with 29 under construction. Taiwan has 6 with 2 more under construction. The Czech Republic has 6. Finland has 4. France has 58. Germany has 9. Hungary has 4. India has 20 with 7 under construction. Iran has 1. Japan has 50. The Republic of Korea has 23. Mexico has 2, the Netherlands have 1, Pakistan has 3, and Romania has 2. Russia has 33, with 11 more under construction. The Slovakian Republic has 4, with 2 under construction. Slovenia has 1, South Africa has 2, Spain has 8, Sweden has 10, Switzerland has 5, the Ukraine has 15. The United Kingdom has 16, and the United States has 104. The total is 437 worldwide in operation, with 68 that are under construction. Any change is resisted because bureaucrats have a vested interest in the chaos in which they exist. Richard Nixon. European reactors have not been without problems of their own. At the end of April, The Guardian had reported a fire at a nuclear power plant triggered a major response by emergency services after smoke was seen billowing into the air. Police and fire crews were called to Hartlepool Power Station at about 6:30 p.m. on Saturday after a blaze broke out while a turbine was being reactivated. The fire caused smoke to billow from the plant, but Cleveland police said it was drifting away from nearby homes. Firefighters extinguished the blaze but remained on site as a precaution. Later, a statement from the firefighters said there is smoke billowing as a result of the fire, but it's currently heading in a direction that does not cause any implications for members of the public. On any news, the Ukraine will cover the collapsed roof of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant with special resin to prevent the spread of radioactive dust, a senior nuclear safety official said here Tuesday. As soon as the weather permits, we will cover the equipment under the caved-in parts of the roof with special resin, Mikhail Gashev, Ukraine's chief inspector of nuclear and radiation safety, told reporters. About 600 square meters of the roof at Chernobyl collapsed in mid-February. Authorities said at the time that the collapse posed no threat to human health. And one more report from Europe, although this is not an all-inclusive list. Smoke coming from nuke plant reactor shut down, smoldering lagging on a turbine. The BBC reported on May the 7th, a nuclear reactor had been shut down after smoke was seen coming from a plant in Lancashire. The reactor at Heysham 1 nuclear power station was shut down at 1800 BST on Thursday due to smoldering lagging on a turbine. EDF, which operates the reactor, said it was shut down as a precaution. Blame is just a lazy person's way of making sense of chaos. Doug Copeland. For those of us who are actually able to find news on the triple nuclear meltdowns in Japan, which are ongoing, unmitigated, and uncontained now for over 2 years, the following news stories were reported in the past week. The cover that had been placed over reactor number 1 is to be removed at the plant, and radiation levels are expected to rise. Work will commence on this reactor in the fall of 2013. Although the amount of radioactive substances released from the reactor into the air will increase between the time the current cover is removed and the new one is installed, TEPCO said it will not likely have a significant impact on the exposure assessment. Fukushima closes 2 parking lots for emergency decontamination work. 2 parking lots in the city of Fukushima were declared off-limits to the public on May 7th after high concentrations of radioactive cesium were detected in the exposed soil there. It's the first time that soil with cesium levels exceeding 100,000 becquerels was found on the grounds of an urban area, not in a sludge accumulated in ditches, said a city official in charge of decontamination work. The exposed soil had accumulated to a height of 1 to 3 centimeters around the edges of parking lots or in sunken parts of the surface, where it mixed with fragments of dead leaves and other material. The survey at the parking lot found radioactive cesium concentrations of 220,000 or more becquerels per kilogram of soil, with the highest level at 433,772. In addition to visitors who visit those facilities, local residents, including students, usually enter the sites for walking and extracurricular activities through those parking lots. Report, TEPCO now dumping contaminated water from Fukushima plant into ocean, 200 tons of radioactive groundwater pumped out. In Kyoto News, the TEPCO plans to discharge some groundwater that has flowed into the premises of the nuclear power plant, and as a trial, it has pumped about 200 tons of groundwater using wells. The density of radioactive substances was the same as in rivers of the surrounding area, according to company officials. The utility hopes to hold a meeting with local fishermen Monday to seek approval of the groundwater release, although they already did it. It was also recently reported that 300 to 400 tons of groundwater is entering the basements of the plant every day. This same worker had asked in the past, "I wonder what would happen to the ground if hundreds of tons of water is pumped up every day. Does it cause ground settlement?" If all mankind were to disappear, the world would regenerate back to the rich state of equilibrium that existed 10,000 years ago. If insects were to vanish, the environment would collapse into chaos. E.O. Wilson. The Deepwater Horizon oil spill, which is also referred to sometimes as the Macondo blowout, was an oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico on the BP-operated Macondo prospect, considered the largest accidental marine oil spill in the history of the petroleum industry, estimated to be between 8% and 31% larger in volume than earlier large oil spills. Following the explosion and sinking of the Deepwater Horizon oil rig, which claimed 11 lives, a seafloor oil gusher flowed unabated for 87 days until it was capped on July 15th of 2010. The total discharge is estimated at 5 million barrels. A massive response ensued to protect beaches, wetlands, and estuaries from the spreading oil by utilizing skimmer ships, floating booms, controlled burns, and almost 2 million U.S. gallons of core exit oil dispersant. After several failed attempts to contain the flow, the well was declared sealed on the 19th of September of 2010. Some reports indicate the well site continues to leak. Due to the 87-day-long spill, along with adverse effects from the response and cleanup activities, extensive damage to marine and wildlife habitats, fishing and tourism industries, and human health problems have continued through 2013. 3 years after the spill, tar balls could still be found on the Mississippi coast. Numerous investigations explored the causes of the explosion and record-setting spill. Notably, the U.S. government's September of 2011 report pointed to defective cement on the well, faulting mostly BP. Earlier in 2011, a White House commission likewise blamed BP and its partners for a series of cost-cutting decisions and an insufficient safety system, but also concluded that the spill resulted from systemic root causes and absent significant reform in both industry practices and government policies, which might well recur. Consider that statement carefully, especially in light of all the nuclear power plant problems that have occurred in just the last few weeks worldwide. Within 24 hours of the explosion, 5 teams of scientists and engineers created 5 very different plans in a desperate attempt to seal the well, even considering the use of atomic bombs to seal it. One plan called for a cofferdam or a dome to be placed as a containment. That failed. Another idea was to do a junk shot made up of rope, rubber, and other things, and that failed. And a third method was using drilling mud to plug the well, which also failed. The BP oil spill was described as being closer to Apollo 13 than it was to the Exxon Valdez. It was an enormous technological challenge that had never been seen before in history and never anticipated. The engineering, the parts needed, it's kind of like throwing everything on the table and being able to see what you can do with it. A White House spokesman was quoted as saying.
Sunday, BP's CEO apologized.
We're sorry. We're sorry for the massive disruption it's caused to their lives. And, there's no one who wants this thing over more than I do. I'd like my life back.
Life here may never be the same. The water and all that lives in and around it could be harmed for years. So on this holiday weekend, some people in New Orleans protested.
We're trying to clean up this mess.
I'm filled with anxiety every night, and I hope that the BP executives feel the same way. Unfortunately, I doubt that they do.
There are many similarities and differences of the BP disaster versus Fukushima. The most obvious difference is one is an oil disaster and one is a nuclear disaster. One is on the surface, One was 5,000 feet below the surface. One was on the news every night on mainstream media. One is almost never publicly addressed, acknowledged, or reported in the mainstream media. One had 5 teams working round the clock trying to mitigate the disaster. One is completely shrouded in secrecy, so we don't know if there's any teams that are doing this. Some of the similarities of the 2 accidents: both had never happened before in the history of its respected field. Both had no technology to fix an event of that magnitude. Both release substances that are dangerous to human health. Both considered nuclear weapons as an option to fix it. Both would damage large areas of land and render it uninhabitable if unmitigated. Various components of both disasters will affect an intricate web of the ecosystem. Neither disaster's effects or long-term consequences is known to anyone. Both cannot be approached by humans. In the BP disaster because of the depth, and in Fukushima because the radiation will kill you within hours, minutes, or seconds. What will it take to organize teams of experts to figure out how to handle Fukushima? Why has the international community not stepped up to help? Why hasn't President Obama made a single statement since his initial one in March of 2011 saying there was nothing to worry about? Why has the EPA stopped testing food, milk, rain, and soil, but raised all the levels that are allowable in our food, milk, rain, and soil? Why are people finding plant mutations all over the US, Canada, Japan, Mexico, Europe, and even parts of South America? And why are plants and trees dying not only in these areas, but in Iceland, Indonesia, Fiji, the Maldives, India, the Canary Islands, and Australia? We need help to answer these questions.
He is frustrated because he cares about the small people, and we care about the small people. I hear comments sometimes that large oil companies are greedy companies who don't care. But that is not the case in BP. We care about the small people. I would like to take this opportunity to apologize to the American people. Through our actions and commitments, we hope that we over long term, that we will regain the trust that you have in us.
And I'd like to leave you with some words about order and chaos from Deepak Chopra.
The nature of life is that it contains both chaos and order. Patterns emerge from disorder and melt back into it. Your body is totally chaotic at certain levels. Swirling atoms of oxygen enter your bloodstream with every breath. Teeming enzymes and proteins fill each cell. Even the firing of neurons in your brain is an electrical storm. It never ceases. Yet this chaos is just one face of order, but there is no doubt that our cells are masterpieces of organized function. Indeed, chaos and order exist so closely to one another that they cannot really be separated. As the German philosopher Nietzsche once said, you must have chaos within you to give birth to a dancing star. And that is literally true. For the swirling primordial gases that formed the early universe had to precede the birth of galaxies. Early on, these gases exhibited no pattern at all, just the faintest tendency to be attracted to one another. Yet out of that faint hint of gravitational pull, a chain of events was set into motion that eventually led to the inception of human DNA, a molecule so complex that to disturb any one of its 3 billion genetic units could make the difference between life and death. On a personal scale, everyone struggles with order and disorder. Things have a tendency to fall apart. What was once fresh and ripe eventually decays. What was young grows old and dies. Those same faint tugs of gravity that created dancing stars out of chaos exist at every level of nature. We can be certain that a rose seed will ultimately grow into a rose, even though, as a seedling, it may look no different from a bean or a violet, and in seed form, its only claim to uniqueness may lie in minuscule twists of its twin strands of DNA. Modern life is so full of pressures, pushing this way and that most of us react by trying to impose order upon it. The problem is that all this struggle, worry, planning and controlling runs against the grain of life. Life compresses chaos and orderliness together. You cannot have one without the other. If you want to be in the flow of life, you can't struggle against it at the same time. Perhaps your future consists of not one scenario, but all possible ones. They branch out from the present moment like invisible threads of potential. If you can accept the flow of life and give in to it, you will be accepting what is real. Only when you accept what is real can you live with it in peace and happiness. The alternative is a struggle that will never end because it's a struggle with the unreal, with the mirage of life instead of life itself.
Nuked Radio normally airs Tuesdays and Thursdays from 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, although we're currently taking a break. My website is fukushimafacts.com, and my main Facebook page is Radchick Radiation Research and Mitigation. Also check out Mutation Watch on Facebook or at the Fukushima Facts website. Please share love, caring, and concern for your fellow man, and stay safe, everyone. I'm interested in anything about revolt, disorder, chaos, especially activity that appears to have no meaning. It seems to me to be the road towards freedom. Jim Morrison.